appreciate that. Can I have the first slide? So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I joined the district in the height of COVID, so it's been difficult to get out in the community, so I'm happy to be doing so now. So unfortunately, I'm not coming with the best news. I have gotten a bit of a reputation at the board for being the Debbie Downer, coming and talking about no water, new restrictions. So I'm going to try and keep it upbeat and smile, but unfortunately, we are in a fairly dire situation. And so there are some measures that we're going to be taking, and we also are using this as a platform to discuss that there will be continued conversations, and also to let you know that we have made those investments in the past, not only locally, but regionally, to make sure that we have supplies to keep us through what we anticipate will be a long-term drought. So I'm sure a lot of you know who we are. We're Santa Fe Irrigation District. We are about to celebrate our 100-year anniversary next year, so we're really excited about that, some of the opportunities that we have available. So you'll be hearing more from us as we start to plan some activities for next year, and hopefully talk about how we are ingrained in the community and how we work together with the community to make sure that our safe and reliable water supplies keep our economy and our community thriving. The next slide, please. I know I'm a little bit in your way. Sorry, I wore heels today. Do you want to move this back?
Yeah. It's okay, guys, I got it.
Every time I hear it, try to.
They knew you could handle it. So just a little bit of background. So we are a semi-arid desert here in San Diego County. And so we really do not have a lot of local supplies that we can use. We are very fortunate in this district in that we are able to use runoff that collects in Lake Hodges. We use that as our local supply. So we get about 30% of that. But we are reliant on imported water supplies that are brought to us via the San Diego County Water Authority, who's our regional wholesaler, as well as Metropolitan Water District, which provides water from the Ventura County line all the way south. So we do have some great opportunities with their large-scale infrastructure to bring water in. So they procure water from the State Water Project to the state, so the snowpack from the Sierra Nevada, as well as the Colorado River, so snowpack from the Rocky Mountains. So in San Diego County, the majority of our water does come from the Colorado River, about 80% that the Water Authority brings in through a variety of agreements. The Colorado River Aqueduct was built during the Great Depression, and so that water has been brought in for years and years. And there are some tours that are coming available again through Metropolitan, and we're happy to offer those where they take you out to the Colorado River, they take you out to the State Water Project, and they show you how water comes into our region, the costs associated with it, the staffing that is done. And it is really part of the plan for Metropolitan as well as our retail agencies to turn all of you into water nerds just like us so that you get excited about talking about it. So again, as I mentioned, we are very fortunate to have that local supply, but because we are reliant on imported supplies, we are impacted by far off water systems. We are impacted by far off droughts, which is how we have gotten to where we are today. The next slide, please. So on the State Water Project, which is managed by the state and the Department of Water Resources, they are on currently what is year 3 of a drought. So it's the 3rd driest year on record. Initially, at the beginning of the year in December, we were looking good. I'm sure we all saw that immense snowpack that we had. We had really great rain here locally. We were able to really reduce our water use, which was amazing. We met the state requirement in the month of December to cut back our water use by 20% because everyone is able to turn off their irrigation systems. But because of dry conditions, it became very dry. And because we had multiple years of dry years, we are experiencing what is called aridification. So the ground has become so dry that any type of moisture you put onto it really gets soaked up very quickly. So what we need is multiple years of wet years to replenish our dry soils. And this is really pretty standard. This is what we see. Droughts are cyclical. It's been happening for a long time. So we have been able to prepare. The state does have large reservoirs in place, but this has the quickness that the ground has become dry is really advancing the discussion on climate change, what we can do to change the way our systems are being managed, the way we're capturing water, the way we're moving water, and most importantly, the way we're using water. So because the snowpack diminished so quickly, they had to reduce what they call their allocation. So out of the state water project managed by the state, they release a certain amount of water each year to farmers and to urban suppliers so that they can manage their supplies. And this year it's at 5%. There was initial talks about it going to a 0%. So this is a really very rare occurrence that occurs. So we are looking at extreme dry temperatures, and you can see this photo, the bottom photo on your right, is actually one of the snow surveys that they did. So usually when they go out to do these snow surveys, this one was the one that was done in April. The ground that they're on that is dry should be covered in snow. They should be looking at multiple feet of snow, but because that ground dried up so quickly, that's where the state really started talking about, we're in such a severe condition, we really need to do some extreme cutbacks and look at what regulatory measures can be put into place to make sure people are conserving water. Next slide, please. So that is a portion of our water supply, the state water project, which in San Diego is minimal because of the way the water authority has divested their supplies. We really get between 10 to 20% on any given year from the state water project. Again, the majority of our water comes from the Colorado River, which has been on a drought condition for about 20 years now, technically about 23 years of drought. And you've seen that as you've seen Lake Powell and Lake Mead quickly diminish. And if anyone has been or talking about houseboating in Lake Powell this year, it is a really dire condition. They're really trying to get any boats onto Lake Mead or Lake Powell. You're looking at a 2 to 3 hour wait because the boat ramps have been pushed back so far. So this picture on your left shows what they call the bathtub ring around Lake Mead. So right now that is about a 10-story building deep of where water should be. And again, Lake Mead, which was created, as part of the Great Depression, we've seen those conditions diminish. And over the past several weeks, they have seen the water level drop dramatically. And that is managed by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. Part of the issue is that people are using water, and part of it is because it is hot, it's the summer, they're seeing some really quick evaporation. So that's why you've seen some calls in the news and the Bureau of Reclamation talking about how they need people to conserve, how they need water agencies to look at putting millions of acre feet back into the river, which means they need people to conserve, they need people to transfer water in. This picture on the right is Hoover Dam. And again, we like to see, in an ideal situation, you would see water levels all the way up to those intake pipes. And that's just not where we are right now. The next photo, please. So this is where I turn into a little bit of a Debbie Downer. So this is a bit of a comparison so that you can see what's been happening on Lake Mead and Lake Powell. So this picture on your left was taken in 2019. So it's an area that it has a lot of boating, a lot of houseboating. And then you'll see this picture here on the right was taken last month. So again, we're seeing really dramatic decreases in those water levels. And unfortunately, I'm going to use a word we're hearing a lot, unprecedented. That's what the Bureau of Reclamation has said. These are unprecedented drops. And so that's why the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation is working with all of the users on the river. And for us, it's Metropolitan Water District who has that direct straw on the river to talk about what they can do, what funding needs to be made available. And really what they're looking at is not only asking urban water suppliers to conserve, and that's us, but also talking to farmers. The California, between the Central Valley and the Imperial Irrigation District areas, El Centro, we are the breadbasket of the United States. So the majority of fruits and vegetables that are used throughout the United States come from California. So they're really asking a lot of farmers to look at fallowing their fields, look at what they can do to be more efficient. There's a lot of innovation that's taking place to reuse water when appropriate. And so this is what you're going to hear a lot in the news is talk of fallowing. How can we put water back into the river, back into storage to make sure that we can make it through the rest of the summer as well as moving forward. Right now, they're predicting another El Nino, which means that we may not get the wet weather that we need this winter. But again, for the Colorado River, we need to see very dramatic increases in snow and rain, and we need to make that happen for the next several years. So if anyone's doing a rain dance, I encourage you to start it now. Next slide, please. And locally, we had decent rain this year. Not as much as we'd like to see. We're hovering around 65% of normal. So we track at Lindbergh Field as well as at Ramona Airport. So here in North County, we usually get a little bit more rain than we do down in San Diego. But again, just not enough. And that really is when we get local rainfall, that really helps us to turn off our sprinklers. You get some, you don't have to pay to irrigate your landscape, but it really is not our core water supply. For us, it's about 30%, but for other agencies throughout San Diego County who rely completely on imported water, it really is not a huge supply. So we really just use this a little bit as a backstop instead of like our main supply when we're looking at local. But As I mentioned, the Water Authority over the last 30 years has made significant investments in their local supply. So that's for seawater desalination, the plant at Carlsbad, which provides about 10% of our regional water supply, recycled water, like what we use in Solana Beach, but also the new projects that are coming online, the City of Oceanside, the City of San Diego, as well as Padre Dam Municipal Water District out in the Santee area, which is working on potable reuse projects where they're taking treated wastewater, cleaning it to a high level, and then putting it back into your system. And that's something that we really are looking towards as the future. A lot of water districts in California are looking at that. It has already been done. I know there's a little bit of an ick factor to it, but Anaheim has been doing it for years. And quite honestly, because we use the Colorado River, we are already using recycled water. You know, that water goes in Vegas, comes back out over here. And what happens in Vegas doesn't always stay in Vegas for multiple reasons. Next slide, please. So the governor, as he's been monitoring the water supplies and he's been briefed, he started putting out resolutions starting last summer as we started to see the dryness, looking at the winter weather, knowing that it wasn't going to give us what we needed. So as we moved into several stages of drought. So in San Diego County, we were fortunate that we were some of the last to go into a full-on drought declaration. That is because we had a little bit more rain than parts of Northern California and the Central Valley, but also because we had made those investments over time. So our supplies have been able to get us through. And I understand that people are feeling that, you know, how can we be cut off from our water supply? And those investments have really carried us through the last 3 years. They've really helped to sustain us. And so now we're getting to a point where we really need to be thoughtful about how we're using water, eliminating that waste, but also thinking about how are we going to plan for the future to make sure that we have abundant supplies to keep our economy going. So in March, the governor made a declaration where he instructed the State Water Resource Control Board, who manages urban water suppliers, to look at emergency regulations, to look at what can be done to make urban water users cut back on their water use, and to try to increase savings, and the goal being to keep water in the reservoirs to get us through the summer as well as through the potential for a dry winter. So he asked the water board to come back by May, which they did, to look at what those provisions would be and what would be put into place as a mandatory measure for urban water suppliers. So if you could go to the next slide. So what he requested was that by June 10th, all water agencies start to enact the measures of level 2 of their water shortage contingency plan. So all water districts have to make plans not only for short-term, but long-term water supply. So we do a 5-year lookout as well as a 20-year lookout. And now as part of a new regulation from the state board, we also do a 1-year dry year contingency plan, which means we look at what were our supplies for last year, what are we looking at for next year, and on a monthly basis, what do we anticipate we will be using and where will those supplies be coming from. And as a portion of that, we also have to put measures into place that in the event that we have to cut back, what are those specific measures that we will put out to the community? And so we had to approve our urban water management plan last year, and that drought shortage contingency plan was also approved last September, and it has very specific measures, actionable measures that produce a certain amount of water or conserve a certain amount of water, and those are in place, and we register that with the state as well as with the state board. So they asked us to go to a level 2, so not to officially go into a level 2 because that also requires some enforcement. And we just don't believe that enforcement is necessarily the way to bring people to where they need to be. Education and outreach is really more important. I think a lot of people aren't always sure about where water is being used or how it's being wasted. So it's really up to us to help to educate them on that. And so as part of that provision, it also meant that there would not be a moratorium on new meters. So with the affordable housing crisis taking place in California, the governor wanted to make sure that housing could still be put into place, which can be controversial, but most new development that goes into place is very water efficient and doesn't have a whole lot of outdoor landscaping. The other provision that the state board put in there was the prohibition of irrigation of commercial non-functional turf. A lot of words. So essentially what they're looking at is for commercial spaces as well as for areas that are managed by HOAs. If there is grass that is not used in a functional level, so if it's not a gathering space, if animals aren't using it, if it's really just there for aesthetic purposes, that commercial and HOA should stop irrigating that. And then also they're looking at to provide additional funding to have that turf replaced by native landscaping or water efficient landscaping. And that, of course, the funding is still just a little bit of a lag. And then it also allowed for making sure that everyone could irrigate trees specifically to make sure that those could be preserved, because trees are a really important part of our community, especially here with all the eucalyptus that we have here. We need to make sure that they're irrigated appropriately, and especially during fire season. So another provision that was put in place by the state board was to make sure that in areas that are fire prone, that they are able to irrigate efficiently. And if you could go to the next slide. So what that means for us is what we have put into place for level 1, which is really just making sure people are efficient with their water use, which a lot of people are already doing. This puts into a more of a mandatory place. So making sure that you're not irrigating after a rain in the event that we get rain, making sure that when you are irrigating, that all that water is hitting your plants and not watering the sidewalk or the gutters. Sidewalks will not grow when you water them. And then also, we also want to make sure people understand that when you're irrigating to the point where you're hitting your sidewalk and your the gutters, not only whatever is in your gutters is going to eventually make it to our beaches and our bays and our streams, which can cause pollution, but it also causes severe erosion, which means you have to replace your sidewalk and your gutter. So it's an infrastructure issue that we want to make sure people are aware of. But also making sure people are signing up for our AMI portal, which helps you to track your use. And you can do that as long as you have your account number and however your bill is named, whatever the name is on your bill, you have to have that to sign up for the AMI portal. And you can do an hourly check of how your water is being used in your community or in your home. So that helps you to identify leaks and areas where you can be a little bit more efficient. And again, making sure people are using appropriate irrigation, making sure they're watering at the correct times. So making sure people are watering after 6 p.m. before 10 a.m. because that's really the most efficient time that you can be. Ideally at this time of the year, if you want to water in the evening, that's great, right around dusk or right around dawn. That's really where you're going to get the most efficiency in your system. And then making sure that people have water available for dust control and things of that nature. Next slide, please. So we're working with our regional wholesaler, the San Diego County Water Authority, as well as with the surrounding water agencies. So we are kind of hugged by multiple water agencies. So Levenheim Municipal Water District, San Diego Water District, the City of Del Mar, and the City of San Diego. We're all working together right now to make sure that our messaging is appropriate, to make sure people know that they're not doing things that are prohibited, like hosing down their driveways or washing their cars when that water can't be captured. So we're going to be doing an education campaign, and we could really use your help in encouraging people to sign up for our social media, sign up for our news flashes, or let us know where we can be so that people hear our messages and that people are aware of not only what the restrictions are, but what rebates are available for our community. Here in this part of the district, because you're in an unincorporated area, you have a turf replacement rebate that is from the Metropolitan Water District, which is $2 per square foot. And then it is also layered by an additional rebate from the County of San Diego and their watershed health protection, which is another $2. So you can get up to $4 per square foot for turf replacement. And we're also, to that end, we are also part of a coalition that is in support of legislation that is coming forward to make sure that rebate is tax exempt. So right now you're taxed on that, but it looks like that bill is passing through the legislature pretty quickly. Hopefully the governor will sign it. But then also making sure people are aware of what resources are available in our community and providing tips and tricks. Next slide, please. And so lastly, I just want to make sure that we are thankful for all of the investments that you've made and all the work that is being put into place to make sure that you are water efficient. That means a great deal to our district, as well as to our reporting numbers to the State Water Resources Control Board, which we do on a monthly basis. But we also are here to ask for how can we assist the community in being water efficient? What can we do? Are there places we should go to give presentations? Are there places we should go to have a booth set up? What can we do for the community? And we're really hoping to get some feedback and hoping to get some engagement from the community. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, all the talk of, the urban restrictions, a lot of your overview focused on that. Doesn't really address the issue that 80 to 85% of our water is ag. And I just saw something on the news the other day with some old farmer. I don't know where he was, but he's planted alfalfa, and he's planted it because he's got to use it or lose it type of deal in terms of his water allocation because of some of these old water rights. I mean, it seems like that should be a lot of the focus. Any input in terms of what's happening there, because we could cut our residential urban use in half, and only you wouldn't see a difference in Lake Mead.
That's a really astute point. And I do think that moving forward in the next month or so, you're going to see a lot of discussion and a little bit of a debate on what is the responsibility for agricultural users when they are using significant amount of water. Are they being as efficient as possible? Are they using innovative concepts to not only procure water supplies, but reuse water when available? And is it necessary for all of that to be exported, not only out of state, but out of the country? And that is a long debate that has been going on. And so what the Bureau of Reclamation in the short term has asked is for farmers to fallow, and they will pay the farmers to offset their costs. But I do think that as a state, that's something we have to think about long term. But there are also significant financial impacts to that as well, because the costs of groceries would go up if we had to import, and with inflationary costs already, that could be a big hit to our community. But also, there's a lot of jobs that are provided by the agricultural community, and I think we are all aware that they have a very strong political lobby as well. So I think that is going to be an ongoing debate, and as the dryness of the West continues, I do think that we have to ask a lot more questions about that, and it's definitely a big topic on water Twitter. So you want to get on water Twitter, it's always an interesting discussion.
Because so much has to do with when people first had the rights to use water and not giving it up. But,
I'll add just another point on the water right discussions. As you know, California has a lot of archaic water rights, legal cases, set those precedents, really established kind of where we're at in terms of water supply and who has the water, who don't have the water. And like I said, we can talk about this for a lot, but there are movement in Sacramento right now talking about, can we reshape some of those legal precedents in some way, some form? I don't know how much traction it's going to get, but at least I'm glad that at least there's some rumbling talking about, hey, at least we need to talk about this.
We have a 1,000-mile coastline on the world's largest body of slightly salty water. The desal plant does 10%, you say, of the county. Why not build 2 or 3 more of those things? And so when we have the nature drought thing, we have sort of a buffer running 24/7, putting water into the system. And it seems like the state in Sacramento, they get bond money, they get lots of talk about this, but just from a strict engineering point of view, it would seem smart just to go on and have a program to build alternate supply as opposed to reduce demand. Either that, or you got to stop building ADUs and bringing people to California, because you're just dividing a water supply in the urban sense amongst more people. So supply has got to be a big solution here. And do we have anything going to provide more supply?
And desal is a very good point. Actually, for San Diego region, we're fortunate that we were first off the block and we're able to get a desal plant in Carlsbad. If you follow the news, obviously there's talk about adding another desal plant up in Orange County, but we're well aware of that. That was voted down by the Coastal Commission. The environmental groups in California have obviously a lot of resources and power, and they seem to be really the major objectors of adding new desal plants. So desal, even though governor came out and supported desal, but the communities in general, especially the coastal community, from the environmental folks, they tend to be against the desal plant. So that's kind of where I think the debates continue to rage today. And the challenge with desal, engineering is the easy part. Technology is there. It's really economic, it's cost and regulation. And even with the San Diego today, even though we're an operating desal plant, and again, working from experience, state water resource control boards are very good to add new regulation on a yearly basis every time your permit needs to be renewed. Yes, ultimately you can comply with those regulations, but inevitably it always adds costs. So kind of give everybody a perspective of desal. In San Diego, the desal cost, it's about $3,000 per acre foot of water. Just give you a little perspective, imported water right now, we're paying about half of that in terms of cost. So big difference. And of course, currently our local water, we're only paying about a couple $100 per acre foot. So we're very fortunate as a district that we have access to that local supply. But those are big difference in terms of economics. So I think that's also another challenge that I think the water industries are seeing. Yes, that supply, I think, provide that reliability, but kind of weighing the benefit of reliability versus economic benefit to kind of where that lies, right? Especially in balance of what other supply you have right now, what's available. And of course, San Diego region, to kind of go back to kind of what we've done, at least to date, Teresa mentioned earlier, not only desal, we also, as part of the region, the San Diego County Water Authority negotiated a higher priority water right transfer from IID, Imperial Irrigation District. So that provide additional resiliency, at least if you kind of go back to the water rights stuff. If they don't turn that upside down, then we have a higher right to get that water. So we are going to be more resilient than other places where they have lower rights. So that's a good thing until they change that. And also the region, like Teresa mentioned earlier, potable reuse is really become the next increment of supply in many parts of California. In San Diego region, city of San Diego is looking at pure water program. Once fully implemented, it's going to be more than half of their supply. And East County, Padre Dam, their supply, that's about a third in terms of potable reuse. And Oceanside, that's about a third of with their newly potable reuse program as well. The good news is that in North County, that there are discussion with not only with San Alejo Joint Powers Authority, but also Encina Joint Power Authority, talking about is there something that we can do for North County related to that next incremental water supply as well. The benefit of that, the potable reuse project, is that you tend to get more environmental group support on that type of project compared to desal. And the amount of salt that you can remove from the recycled water source is much lower. Therefore, the energy consumption is lower. The typical cost for that supply is still more expensive than imported water supply, but certainly it's less than desal. So that it's around $2,000 per acre foot, maybe a little more than that. But compared to desal, that's $3,000. So that's, looking at that, that's like, okay, maybe there's something there, right? We're getting closer as imported water supply kind of inching toward that $2,000 mark. Maybe we're kind of getting the tipping point, say, maybe there's a leg in that. So there's ongoing discussion on that.
Well, does the potable reuse project, because I've talked about this in the state for years and years, it always seems to take more time. But does that pull away water supply for all the purple pipe that's installed if they were to try to utilize potable reuse more?
It is. It can be, as we kind of get into that realm, there's always discussion about what is the best and highest use of that water. Environmental groups would prefer that water to use for drinking purpose rather than for irrigation purpose. So in general, they are more potable water supply, potable water reuse projects are more favored than purple pipe projects. I know, just speaking from experience of working with both the City of San Diego and the East County's potable reuse program, both those agencies have at least made a commitment to guarantee that they'll continue to serve their existing purple pipe customers, but they're not adding any more new purple pipe customers.
Right. Well, but that's always been kind of the issue with our rural area, because the purple pipe that's in SFID is all coastal, so they've got their supply, but we can't get purple pipe here, and we will never get purple pipe here. So it really is, how do you deal, across the water district like we have that has very different needs, but infrastructure is kind of frozen.
Right. And again, the San Alejo JPA, the unintended consequences of conservation is that the source that's available to recycle is also dropping.
Limited.
It's limited.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, again, that's an ongoing discussion with the state about this too, to say, especially they're looking at limiting indoor use even further. The water industry is telling the state to say, okay, maybe you guys are, it's not worth the squeeze at this point in terms of conservation. And also, on one hand, you're supporting these type of water recycling project by limiting your indoor use even further. That's going to affect the potable reuse project even more. So that you kind of have this downward spiral conundrum that we all are dealing with right now. But it's a very astute point. It's an ongoing dialogue with the state on those issues.
And there are quite a few infrastructure bills that are floating right now, and in this election cycle and the next election cycle, you're going to see a lot of pressure. We're on several coalitions right now pushing the state to provide direct funding to water districts, but also doing large-scale infrastructure projects to make sure that the benefits are received by the community, but not necessarily put on individual ratepayers. So this is really a discussion, a very robust discussion that's been taking place for the last 6 months, and we're fortunate to be working with the Association of California Water Agencies. One of our board members is on the board there, and we're active with those groups. That really helps to advocate on the 223 bills that are currently in the election cycle this year. So,
If there are no more questions, I just want to add a couple things. Again, I want to, on behalf of the district, I want to thank all the community members that already done as much as you can in terms of help us conserve the water state. And of course, our goal here is really just more provide information, provide resources to help those folks who perhaps haven't done so. Again, provide them resource to help the folks to be a little more efficient. And of course, a couple of things. You probably do know that Lake Hodges is under emergency repair. So the water level is really, really low right now for a reason. We do anticipate the city of San Diego, they are the owner of the dam. We share water resources with the city, but we don't own the dam. So they are undertaking the repair. They anticipate the repair should be complete by October of this year. Ish. So more to come on that one. So for those of you who are interested in those things, feel free to either contact us or come to our board meeting. We share those updates with our board. And also just kind of let you know too, we're undergoing our cost of service study again. Again, I can't believe it's 3 years. When I first started district, we had to do one, and now we're looking at it again. At this point, our board has not made any decision on kind of where we're at. We're still going through a series of workshops and looking at alternatives and options. And again, for those community members who are interested in those discussions, we have very robust discussions. Again, I want to recognize one of our board member, Director Johnson, who's in the audience. There's a lot obviously go into doing a cost of service, especially for a water agency these days. Just like everything else we do, we are bound by many legal regulations, legal requirements. So it's very strict in terms of how we have to look at things. So again, for those folks who are interested, those workshops, those dates are posted on our website. So please visit. So with that.